Yo, what is up guys? It is Bumfris, back with episode 78 of our Reddit series. This one's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be some church drama, and I have a feeling you're going to love this one. I know you've all been waiting for this one for a little while now, and it is a much smaller subreddit with only about 6,500 subscribers, but it's an absolutely awesome one. Now all you need to do is sit back, relax, and enjoy some church drama. Although I no longer believe or practice, my mother asks me to come with her every year to midnight mass at the church that my family has been going to for decades. I love my mum, and it's all the small things that make her really happy, so I'll always toughen through it for an hour. This year, returning home from college, I noticed that Father Jeffrey, the priest who baptized me and who has been the head of the church for years, was replaced by an unfamiliar face at his usual stand. We were sitting in the pews about 5 minutes before the service started, so I asked my mum where he was in a tone that the others around us could hear. All of a sudden, the lady sitting to the front right of me turns around and just glares at me. I'm now very confused why this gremlin looking lady is so fixated on me and my mum giving me the "don't talk about this right now, shut the F up" look, and I just pretend like nothing was ever said. Once we got back in the car after mass had ended, my mum spilt the beans. Apparently Father Jeffrey was not the celibate man that he vowed to be. During my time away at school, the husband of the head of the choir came home to Father Jeffrey inserting in his wife's mouth. The husband then understandably proceeds to beat the crap out of him and also post all about what he'd seen on the wall of the church's Facebook page. Although they delete the post quickly, news spread around the tight-knit congregation like wildfire. Tons and tons of some of the church's most loyal families began to leave or threaten to do so. The mums were in uproar, and things went south fast. That following Sunday, Father Jeffrey and his gigantic balls still gave his usual sermon. My mum told me that even from the furthest back row, you could see his black eye and bruises. How he could possibly preach after such news came out, you might ask? As I said, Father Jeffrey had been there for decades and practically owned the place. The rest of his loyal church staff did what any Catholic church does best and try to hide and pretend the situation at hand had not occurred. Because he was not fired, much of the congregation who loved the affected husband were out to get Father Jeffrey. The infuriated mothers made it 5 minutes before they started heckling him, and the service soon turned to chaos. Everyone was screaming at everyone, and many churchgoers began to leave during the pandemonium. Said scenes of parishioners flocking out in hordes caused the outside security to storm in and down the aisle thinking something bad was happening. In this frenzy of words, apparently another woman came forward and said that her 19-year-old daughter had confided in her that her and Father Jeffrey had sex on multiple occasions. Several other women also began accusing him of making advances on them, with one lady flat out admitting that they had sex in the church. According to my mum, he'd been sleeping with people's wives for years. Two sides formed during this shouting match, with the priests and security on one and the churchgoers on the other. In fear of his own safety, as a large group of the men had become increasingly aggressive with the newest revelations, Father Jeffrey fled to his private back parking lot, hopped in his Tesla, and was never to be seen again. The service was cancelled on site and for the following week due to maintenance. Father Jeffrey was fired and replaced, and the church entered into an awkward phase for a few months. The husband divorced the choir wife and apparently still goes to the church with his kids. My mum said a lot of people have come back, but there is still a giant elephant in the room. I forgot to mention that this church was also linked to a preschool through to 5th grade school, so a lot of these people, like the husband, were around the church and its community a lot. This is the main reason that people rallied so quickly and how the news spread. I've been talking to my dad, and he reminded me that all of this drama put immense pressure on the school administration. With parents threatening to withdraw their kids from the church's main revenue source, many of the young children found out about it, which I find hilarious and equally sad. You know, we're only one story in, and I can already see why you guys wanted me to read this subreddit out so badly. If it keeps up like this, I have a feeling this is going to be one of the most juiciest subreddits on this channel. My mother's side of the family was and still is really into the Catholic Church. Like really. My grandfather had been a church usher for 60 plus years, and my grandmother had worked at the rectory most of her life. My various aunts, which there are 6 in total, ran the church's religious education program for the parish, ran the church choir, and canted and led fundraising efforts. My own parents were Eucharistic ministers, and every Sunday, every holiday, you know where you'd find us. For the first 18 years of my life, I was pushed into the Catholic Church due to my family's involvement. I was a kid, and this was just a way of life. I complained here and there, but always attended masses, youth grouped it up, and taught preschool kids about Jesus on the regular. When I went away to college, I fell out of Catholicism. I realized that I disagreed with much of the religious basis and therefore decided to forego my involvement in the church. Father Roger was a priest who was a close friend of our family. As a kid, he had been the priest at our parish but was transferred to a new parish in the same city when I was about 11. That didn't stop Homeboy from always being around though. He was invited to and attended every family party, holiday gathering, wedding, baptism, and so on and so forth. Hell, Father Roger even went on family vacations with some of my aunts and uncles. I can say this, he was a cool guy. He'd been a long-haul truck driver and comedian before his calling from God became apparent. There was never anything creepy about him, and he really was super funny. I never minded him being an extended part of my extended family. Fast forward to me being 24, life is good, I have a good job, and have recently become engaged, and we found out that I was pregnant. We were overjoyed. My religious ass family, not so much. I'd been 3 months pregnant at my wedding, which we had opted to have at a reception hall. We were married by a close friend of my soon-to-be hubby, who was an ordained minister. One day my phone rings, and it's Father Roger. Word of our little miracle had spread to him. To make this short and sweet, this man berated me for 20 minutes before I hung up on him. During this time, he managed to call me faithless, soulless, and an embarrassment. He informed me he wouldn't be at the wedding, even though my mum had invited him, but also informed me that he could no longer be associated with my extended family due to my mistakes. He was choosing to cut ties with everyone because of their involvement with me. What's really crazy is although he didn't come out and say it, he hinted at an abortion a few times during the conversation. I was so befuddled, I mainly just listened to this guy rant and spew hate at me. I couldn't even form words. My family was upset that he chose to cut ties over this, but eventually they got over it. No one has seen him since around that time period. I wonder why this pregnancy in particular struck such a big chord with the priest. I'm having a read through some of the comments, and there's quite a few from OP saying how the priest was more than happy to be friends with people who had done bad things in the past, for example, actually having people that have had kids out of wedlock, but for some reason, not this girl. Sounds to me like maybe he was hiding something and took it out on the wrong person instead of dealing with his own past problems. In my hometown, which is in a small city in the middle of nowhere in Texas, my parents and I went to a large Methodist church. It was a pretty decent church, and the congregation had some well-to-dos in it. It wasn't the wealthiest church in town, but it definitely wasn't in the middle either. Anyway, at this time, there lived an old Baptist preacher, let's call him OBP, that led one of the few black churches in town on the poorest side of town. He served the community for decades and was a great help to the local kids. My dad was an architect, builder, carpenter, etc. and at the time was joining various committees and city boards and just becoming more involved in the city and the community. So my dad eventually runs into OBP at a community meeting and they just get to talking. My dad asks OBP what he does, and OBP is really humble and just gives him the gist of helps out local kids and families and just preaches the good word, etc. But my dad is an overachiever. He doesn't believe that that's all he does, and so he starts asking around about OBP and finds out what OBP's humility won't bring him to say. Every day, for at least 50 years, OBP has been making sure that every kid near his church, even if their families don't go to his church or believe in God, gets a ride to his church in his old church bus where he then served them breakfast for free, and then gets them on the bus for school. After school, he would let them play at his church grounds to keep them off the streets. This continued during summer and winter breaks. OBP would actively seek out at-risk kids and bring them into the fold, feed them, get them to school, and then just go and let them play. OBP didn't seek any recognition for it, and he just wanted to get it done. My dad is just in awe at this guy and his contributions to the community. So he makes it a point to run into OBP again and asks if he can visit OBP's church. OBP readily agrees, but doesn't see what my dad is up to, thinking of some way to help out OBP's operation. So OBP leads my dad into his church, and my dad instantly sees that the roof is just patchy, hadn't been repaired for years amongst a few other immediate construction issues. So what does my dad do? He calls up all the contractors he's worked with over the past 8+ years, asking if they'll help him out and repair OBP's church. My dad can't afford to pay them out of pocket, so they'll have to help for free, donating their services to that church. Every single one of them agrees to help pro bono, whether it's contributing materials or just doing the work themselves. Dad then calls up OBP and tells him that they're offering to repair his roof and a few other things. OBP is just beyond happy, offers to pay, but my dad completely refuses as there's no way that OBP could afford it anyway, and says to just consider it a donation to the church. Fast forward a few weeks and OBP has a new roof and all of the construction issues are fixed, plus a few extra things thrown in, all from the best contractors in town. All is well in the world until, back at our Methodist church, one of the church members had heard about my dad giving OBP's church a new free roof. News spreads like wildfire thanks to the church lady network and reaches the ears of the church elders. The elders then talk to my dad about a roof for our church and ask him to a meeting regarding construction. At the meeting, the elders ask my dad to do all the work for free as an act of service to the church. Dad says that he'll do it for pay, as they can pay, and their roof isn't in need of any repairs at all. The elders disagree and again bring up the fact that my dad provided a free roof for another church that wasn't even his church, and would expect him to do the same. My dad reiterates his position and leaves the meeting both furious and disappointed at the church's elders. Fast forward a few weeks and some of the more rabid churchgoers are gossiping about my dad doing free stuff for a black Baptist church and not our predominantly white Methodist church. My mum catches wind of it, tells my dad, and we leave the church immediately, never to return again. This was really a shame as there were plenty of really good people there that were totally helpful and colorblind, which was still a really big deal in the 80s. Just a few bad eggs at the top. But after we left, others saw what was going on and also left the church. I didn't learn the why of all of it until I was a teenager. I heard most of the story from my mum as my dad only gave a very short version of it. They didn't attend church regularly again for almost 30 years. Well, I guess at the end of the day, that's what being greedy gets you. It doesn't matter if you're a church elder or if you're just a normal person on the street. At the end of the day, if you're greedy, you're going to have the consequences come down on you. It annoys me knowing that they also had a problem with him repairing the roof as somebody else just because they were at a different church and a different ethnicity, but regardless of who they were doing it for, they should have just been grateful that they had somebody in their church who was willing to go out and help somebody else in the community. About 20 years ago, the priest at my local church liked getting all the kids in the congregation to the front of the church, ask them questions like their favourite colour, what sport they play, etc. And then the kids would answer into the mic. During one of these days, the priest comes up to me and asks, "Did you make your bed this morning?" And I answer, in front of about 100 parishioners, "No, that's woman's work." The church went wild. I was only 8 or 9 at the time, and I must have heard that saying on TV or something. My mum made us clean the house upside down and inside out for the next year. Just a quick little one to wrap things up, I wanted to finish up with something nice and funny, just so you guys got a bit of a laugh before it ended. What OP said is actually so true though, right? Like, we're so influenced by what we see as kids and what we see in movies and TV shows and that we wouldn't even know any better, and it would be so understandable just to blurt something out like this at the age of 8 or 9. As the title said, kids say the darndest things. Alright everyone, that is that for today's episode of r/ChurchDrama. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Before I get into asking you guys to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Bumfris, I just want to say thank you for all the suggestions for this. I know we mentioned it in a previous video and a few of you guys went and checked it out and you were really excited by the possibility of making a video, and I'm really happy we did. The only problem with this subreddit is it is quite small. Like I said at the start of the video, there's only about 6,500 people that follow it, so there's not a lot of great new content on here. So if you guys do have some stories where you would like to see me feature them, now is probably the best opportunity that you'll have, because like I said, there's not a lot on here at the moment. But yeah, I am really excited to expand into new and smaller subreddits, so thank you again for all the suggestions. I really do appreciate it, but otherwise I am going to let that wrap things up there. I just want to say again, thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you're all having a fantastic day. Tomorrow is going to be another episode of Entitled Parents, of course, so I'll see you there, and don't forget that you're all awesome. Bye.